Hi, this is the actual interview project assignment.
Hello, my name is Dominique and I'll be
Hi.
interviewing you
Thanks.
today. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions, and if you have any questions for me towards the end, you can let me know.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so tell me about yourself.
Thanks. So yeah, I am on course or on track to graduate with my major, my bachelor's in health management and administration, and it has definitely been a humbling degree and course to learn. I've really enjoyed all of the studies that I've encountered regarding the healthcare system operations and healthcare management, and I really am excited to be able to apply that, especially to this particular job role that we have. And before I even got into that, I was definitely involved in the healthcare field. I was a CNA and a med tech for about 2 years. So being able to experience that particular job career really just put me in a really good position to kind of learn the ins and outs in my own way of healthcare operations and systems and even workflows that I would hope to utilize and reference when I am able to step into a more leadership role regarding healthcare operations.
And so, why are you interested in this position?
So definitely what drew me to this particular position here with you guys was your reputation. You guys have a really good representation regarding the prioritization of patient care and quality of life care that you provide to your residents and patients here. And I think that's always the number one draw, or the number one interest that I've always had. I definitely think that with your programs that you've implemented, they've been really admirable, and I really like the idea of you guys implementing strategies and approaches to be able to give patients a quality of life and care that they well deserve. And I think it's a huge thing with our outer community that aging is bad, and that because of that they're not able to do things that they may have been able to do when they were younger, and therefore it puts them in a position where they're depressive or they're not really motivated to do anything or socialize or interact. And I think you guys have really great programs that you implement to be able to give them back the motivation to socialize and to be around their peers and to enjoy their life as they deserve to.
That's awesome. I love the idea of you wanting to destigmatize aging and understanding that our elders deserve a quality of life, regardless of their age. So, and that's pretty much what we reflect on in our program. I also majored in health management. How'd you get into it?
Um, so I actually got into health management after a little bit of a break. So I originally wanted to get into nursing, and it just seemed like it was the right thing for me. During high school, I was from my freshman year to senior year, I was in a healthcare program, and it just seemed like it fit. So I was already kind of exposed to healthcare education curriculums from when I was young, and it just seemed like it would be a pretty good path. It seemed like it fit for me. I thought that based off like empathy, morals, ethics, I felt like I would do pretty well in the field. So it was just something that seemed like the right decision. And going into college, I went right into it. But there was just a point, which really I feel was during my time being a CNA. Although it was extremely rewarding being in that field and experiencing what I did, I thought that I just found way more interest in more of the workflows. And I feel like it was more so because of the barriers that we had to kind of deal with while we were in that field during on shift. So like whether it's scheduling issues, and now we have to essentially risk our quality of care that we're providing to our already set schedule of patients. We have to add on one or even two more, which may not seem like it's a lot, but it is when it comes to having the responsibility of taking care of somebody. So when we would have scheduling issues and somebody wouldn't be able to come in, we would have no backup, whether we're calling hospitals, we're calling other healthcare facilities, we're calling other departments within our facility, and nobody would be able to come in. It would be really upsetting and kind of disheartening, and of course it would affect us, but if it's going to ripple effect to our residents as well, because maybe we're not coming as fast as we would like to, or maybe we're feeling a little bit rushed, a little pressure, and it would always reflect in the quality of care that we would be able to provide to them. Not to say that it would be subpar, but it does put us at risk, and ultimately the patients as well, when we do have these immense pressures. So when we have those types of barriers like scheduling issues, accessibility issues, resource issues, it would always interest me to think about how this could be resolved, what could be done, what's missing. And I think being able to get into that type of position and kind of just close those gaps would be really, really meaningful to me. And I feel like it would just help me make a bigger impact that I would personally love to make. And it also showed me that I can make a huge difference and make a huge and meaningful impact in healthcare without necessarily having to be or having to provide direct patient care. It's not the only form of healthcare that I could provide. And I think kind of allowing myself to get out of that box and maybe explore healthcare in what could be considered debatably an unorthodox way, it brought me to my health management major. And it's been amazing since then. I think just learning the ins and outs of workflows, of operations, of healthcare, and how taking on leadership roles can affect that, being able to learn about emotional intelligence and how I can apply it to my employees and be able to just run a tight but smooth ship, it just seems like a better reward. And that's what kind of drew me to it.
Okay, so we have a lot of projects that require teamwork. When's the time that there was a disagreement? What part did you play? Who disagreed? And how did you work it out?
So I think definitely in school you have a lot of projects that you have to do with other students. So I've had plenty of those, and usually is always something about it. So I think there was one time recently I can remember that I was in a group and we had to actually perform an evaluation on the workflow operations at a particular healthcare facility and be able to come up with approaches or strategies to lessen it. So in that particular issue, it was more so about resource gaps. And there was a lot of things that had to do with documentation that was being a little bit unreliable, and even just increased call time. So essentially a resident is hitting some type of alert to tell them that they're in need of assistance, and the times that the employee is able to go to the resident and assist them is a little bit too long. So we had to come up with some strategies about that. And at first we had originally set a strategy in motion, and the work was delegated and everybody was kind of moving at their pace, completing their work. And we kind of had a issue where there was one person in the group that thought that the particular approach wasn't really cost effective, especially considering that the target community was more of a marginalized, low income community. And they thought that it just wasn't really a good approach considering the context. And there was some members that didn't want to kind of go back on the work that they've already completed and essentially kind of draft a whole new approach and strategy because they've already made it this far, and it just seemed like it would be a lot of waste work. So it caused a lot of issues between us. So there was a lot of communication issues, and there was even a point where the particular student that wanted to kind of redraft the technique didn't want to do any more work because they felt like it wasn't quality work that they were going to turn in. So it was kind of hard to deal with, and it was definitely going to put us at a very off spot. So what we did was I actually decided to kind of call in a group meeting and give it a space where, initiating the conversation, we made it clear to each other that this is going to be a respectful one, a professional one, and it's going to be a cooperative one, a collaborative one, where we're going to talk together. We're not going to talk at each other, but talk with each other, and we're going to figure this out because at the end of the day, this does all affect us, and we have to have a common and shared goal. And it actually turned out pretty well. So leading on the conversation, we were able to kind of talk to each other and figure out how we were going to move forward, and it actually ended up turning into us having two strategies. So it was the original one that we started with, and we continued on with that one, but we also drafted the second one that would be catered to a more low budget friendly approach to hit our target community. And it satisfied everybody. Everybody was more than willing to do it. Everybody was able to see why it could be important to do it. And it also allowed us to still get the benefit of putting in or continuing on with the work that we already started. And it was great. I mean, the communication got way better with the group. We were working together pretty well. We also even talked about redelegating work, especially considering we were going to bring on a new approach and a new strategy. So it meant that we would have to maybe think about how we would have to break up this work and distribute it. So we talked about that, and it worked really well. And we were able to get the job done. We did it on time and turned it in. And it was actually pretty funny because when we got the grade back from it, we got a great grade. But also we even got, the particular professor even asked us if we would allow him to use our assignment as a mock example for future semesters. So it was a kind of it was a really sweet moment to see how we were able to come together with a shared common goal, and we even got rewarded from it, not just with a good grade, but even just with praise from the professors. So it showed that it was worth it in the end, and it was really cool to see.
So what are your long-term goals, and what strategies do you think you can bring into the health environment and be able to create a system that works for everyone?
So my long-term goals is I definitely want to be at a company where I'm in a position that I could definitely delegate healthcare operations and roles. So I definitely want to be a part of the group that is talking about restructuring frameworks and systems and guidelines as to how workflows and operations are being handled, in our company. And I even want to take it a step further and potentially even get into political healthcare. So I am interested in maybe seeing how the political world surrounding healthcare could involve my work and career. So I'm even considering maybe taking like some extracurricular courses that have to do with maybe healthcare laws and legislatures that could give me more information about healthcare operations and rules that could also I can apply to be able to make sure that we are hitting all necessary jurisdictions and making sure that we're addressing all necessary things, and we're not just necessarily providing quality of care to applied to legal statutes, but also to ethical ones and moral ones and just quality ones that reflect our prioritization of our residents and patients.
And so for me, in the role that I take, I feel like organization and efficiency is one of our major things. How can you bring that back to your CNA and working this?
So definitely organization was a big one, and definitely of course efficiency, because again we were in a morning shift and we had 8 hours to take them to breakfast, pick them up from breakfast, take them to lunch, pick them up from lunch, take them to activities. There was a lot of things that we had to do. A lot of residents showered in the morning, so that was something that you had to do. So you definitely had to be efficient, effective, and organized. And it was really hard for you if you weren't, honestly. You would be under a lot of pressure. So one, I think you definitely have to get used to it. So I think basically being organized as in making sure that you and effective as in making sure that you know your residents. And again, that does take time to do, but making sure you're talking with them and communicating with them. Obviously you are there to do a job, but at the end of the day you are taking care of somebody, and you have to know the person that you're taking care of. Everybody is different, everybody has different expectations, everybody has different wants and needs. So understanding your patient and your resident and being able to talk to them and understand what they expect and being able to align that and work out a schedule with them was one of the major things that allowed me to be successful as a CNA. So I would kind of morph my scheduled patients with a scheduled time. So I had one resident that he liked early showers, but he also had to be downstairs for breakfast by 7 o'clock. So he was one of the first people that I would go to take his shower, and so on. So you kind of just morphed it, and you just worked well with the people that you're working with. And that's why I'm really big on teamwork and collaboration, because it is a part of the thing that makes the world go round.
Yes. Okay. I'm sure that's one of your major strengths. What are some other strengths you can bring into this role?
So I definitely like bringing in the strength of leadership and collaboration. So I'm definitely willing to take on roles that put me with more responsibility and accountability, and being able to kind of guide those around me. I feel like I'm very good with teams and working, and I've never really had a problem with taking on a role. So I think it would just really benefit me to be able to challenge myself in these leadership roles and be able to put forth work, using work ethics, using strategies and approaches, being creative and innovative, and allowing that to fuel me and motivate me to do better and to operate with people and just create quality care.
That's good. And so, what do you consider one of your biggest accomplishments this year?
So I think one of my biggest accomplishments has to be when I transitioned from CNA to MedTech, and it was a pretty big moment for me because it was one, the closest that I've kind of gotten to broadening my scope of practice in the healthcare field. But I also thought that it just allowed me to get into a leadership role. It allowed me to challenge myself with what I could handle and what I could do. So although I was a med tech, I still did help. I I still provided care for patients under certain scopes, of course, because there were CNAs that were there, and it was, I don't want to say it wasn't necessarily my job anymore, because I feel like it's always your job to care for these patients. So whenever I had the time and I was able to help out a fellow CNA, although I was a med tech, I absolutely would. So it was just really cool to see me multitask in even a broader way, and to see me work with others in a more leadership role, because I did go up a step level on the ladder, and I was able to kind of balance that out with my previous knowledge and my previous practices being a CNA. And I thought it was really cool to see.
That's good. So in my field of practice, we do build up a lot, and transition is a very big thing. How would you say you handled your transition from being a CNA to becoming a med tech? Was it heavy on you?
Yeah, so it was definitely nerve-wracking, because again, it is a higher level. It comes with more responsibility and accountability, and at that point I was in charge of not only providing care, but giving medication. So it was definitely a scary transition, but I feel that I was granted the proper training, and I was granted the time that I needed. I took about a week of training outside of the programs or the credits that I had to take knowledge-wise, course-wise. And I think during that week, I really just took my time, and I really gave myself the opportunity to ask questions, to be involved, to make sure I am standing behind the person and looking over their shoulder to see what they're doing and why they're doing it. And again, just to work with the schedule and understand my patients, my residents, the floor. And the transition was definitely a smooth one. Of course, it was a little nerve-wracking, especially when I ended up doing it on my own. But during the training times when I was with another employee who knew what they were doing, who was a med tech, and they were training me, I definitely took advantage of that to the fullest extent, and I made sure that I was ready by the time it was ready for me to be on the floor on my own.
I remember working in nursing. Every day was something new, and you're always constantly learning. And I'm sure that's the same for CNAs. I'm sure you're walking around, running around, and it could be a lot on you. So describe the time that you had to learn something quickly and on the spot.
So I think it happens all the time in healthcare, right? And one of the things I always find funny was there was a time where I had a resident, and he, a lot of times residents do have some issues. They fall, they have wounds, and he had a wound on his leg and on his arm. And he liked to shower. He was somebody that definitely liked to shower, and he was really just discouraged because he had a fall and he had wounds, and he wasn't going to be able to shower anymore. It was really making him upset. And I definitely could have stopped there. I could have been like, well, we are under rules to not wet your wound. It is what it is. I can't shower you. But I decided to work with what I had, and to work with that resident to get him what he felt like he needed. So I actually used those wet umbrella bags that you would see at like Publix or at the stores. I would take a couple of them we had in our facility, and I would just cut a hole through the bottom, and I would wrap it up his arm, and we would use like medical tape to secure it. And I would give him a shower, and we would be able to shower him without wetting his wound. And it just showed me how, although there may be gaps, there may be issues, and sometimes it's hard, you really just have to work with what you have, and to just try to be quick and innovative and creative on your feet, and you'll be able to do things that you never even imagined that you're able to do.
So tell me about a time that you had to multitask and you were under pressure.
So being a CNA and a med tech, you have to multitask every shift. So definitely I feel like I felt it a lot more as a med tech, because I was in charge of 2 floors. I had the first and second floor that I was in charge of passing meds on. So it was definitely a lot of multitasking to make sure that I was on track and on schedule with my med pass. So what I would do is I would definitely just try to schedule myself and pace myself properly, because at the end of the day, it is about the patients. It's not about me trying to hit a particular mark. I would rather prioritize the care of my patients and deal with maybe the consequences of being a little off schedule than me trying to rush and I make what could be a fatal mistake. So I would definitely pace myself. I would try to group together in ways that I could, and it would kind of just help it be a little bit easier for me. I also, again, had to understand and remember the schedules of my patients. There were some patients that would go downstairs for breakfast. There would be some that I would have to get to them before or after their showers. So also just being able to kind of remember and visualize the schedule of what I would need to do helped me a lot with multitasking, and it helped me be able to make it on time in my past. Also working together with my CNAs. So I would have some CNAs that, of course, they're also on their own time schedule, and they would have to make sure that they have to bring their residents where they need to be. So also working with them, we had walkie-talkies and being able to communicate with them on time and on the spot to be able to make sure that I knew where the residents were when I needed to know. Also helped me to make sure that I was able to kind of balance out the multitasks that I would have to perform.
Okay. So describe to me a time that you solved the problem creatively.
So there was a time where we had a lot of issues regarding scheduling. There was just a brief moment in time where we had a lot of call outs for some reason, and it kind of put a lot of strain on us because it would be a lot of times where nobody really wanted to come downstairs and pick up a resident. Or somebody was just too busy that they would have to come down to the first floor and they're on the sixth floor, and it would just put them really past schedule. So I would come in, and usually I would help to delegate that task, and I would help communicate with everybody as to what they're comfortable with. I would work with floors. Sometimes we would have floors that would have some residents and patients that were a little bit more they needed a little bit more care than usual or than compared to other residents, and I would kind of just work with the CNAs to ensure that we kind of split and delegated those residents properly and fairly to ensure that we weren't going to undermine or underaddress residents because we were overloaded with more. So, and it also felt like it was more of like a leadership role that I had to take on to last minute because nobody else was really there to do it. Our manager wouldn't come in until 10 o'clock, but our shift starts at 7 on the dot. So we don't really have time to call the manager and ask what they want us to do or to figure it out. We kind of just had to roll with what we had, go with the punches, and kind of just figure it out on our own. So, yeah.
Okay. So I'm sure throughout school you've done a lot of projects and you've gained feedback on it, and I'm sure even working as a CNA you've gained a lot of feedback on it. So how did you handle that? What did you do with this information that they gave you, and how did it efficiently help you progress in the future?
So feedback was really important, especially during my training days. So I would definitely ask for a lot of feedback then. And luckily, I was at a facility where we had a lot of team meetings, and we were able to have a space and an environment and a job culture where we could talk to each other, voice concerns, voice questions without any pushback or passive aggressiveness or even being reprimanded. So with feedback, I would definitely just ask like where I went wrong and what would be a better alternative, and I would definitely just be open to it. I would come into having those conversations with an open mind, because at the end of the day, it's not to punish me, it is to improve my care and the care that I provide to my patients. So just having an open mind when we had these conversations is what really led me to be able to learn from any mistakes or just discrepancies that I could move forward from.
So many times when I was in nursing, I would have issues where I would have to take on a leadership role. Tell me about a time where you took on a leadership role without having, the official leadership.
Yeah, so there would be times where we would have a resident that would fall or just get hurt, and being a CNA or even a med tech, it's not within your scope of practice to pick up a patient if they fell or, just because of the potential injuries that they could have faced. So in moments like that, there was one time where I had to come into a room and I had a resident that was just showing a lot of very serious medical issues. And again, in those moments, there's not really a lot of time for me to kind of call my manager and be like, hey, what do you want me to do? It was one of those moments where you kind of just have to go. It's almost like instinctive. So in that particular moment when I was showing signs and symptoms of some pretty serious medical conditions, I took on the leadership role of just paging my downstairs nurse. I think I was on the 6th floor, so it would have taken a little bit of time for them to come up. They also needed to make sure that they brought the proper equipment to come up. So I definitely just paged the nurse, told them that they need to come up here very soon. As soon as possible, I will be calling the police because this is definitely something that is going to require hospitalization. And with that, I definitely had to be willing to talk to the nurse, be able to tell them what happened, I would have to definitely document. So in those particular moments, which didn't happen often, you would definitely have to step into a role where you had to take and assume responsibility and accountability for what is now to happen, as you have to help the residents in the best way possible while still within your scope of practice. So,
Okay, so describe to me a time that you worked with someone very differently from you.
I feel like it happens all the time. Definitely when I was as a CNA and a med tech, I was one of the youngest people there. So everybody else had a lot of years of experience on me, and sometimes at first it was kind of difficult to handle that. Sometimes, um, when there's cultural differences, language barriers, all that stuff can come off a little bit difficult. But I think again, when you just have in mind the mindset of having a shared common goal with people, it's always worth it in the end. And being able to reflect back to that when necessary is what really motivated me and my team, honestly, to work together always, to communicate with each other always, and to make sure that at the end of the day, we're doing this for the patients and not for us. And I think that's what really just helped us be able to gather up together at the end of the day and work really well.
Okay. Working in the hospital, I remember that we would always have different people come in with different issues. Sometimes they might not like the particular way we were trying to solve their issue.
Right.
But, I'm sure that's universal to every field.
Yeah.
So tell me about a time that in your CNA days you had a difficult patient or even a difficult family member. I know it's hard to work with them sometimes too.
Yeah, I definitely dealt with some family members that were a little bit harder to please. And honestly, I just come at it with a mindset that at the end of the day, this is their father, their mother, their sister, their brother, and they want what's best for them. And I'm sure that it's a really hard experience for them to be going through, as well as the patient. And honestly, I would really just talk to the family. I would introduce myself. I would tell them my name. I would tell them, that I will be here on these days, and when I'm here, these are the things that I do for this particular patient or resident. And when I would see them, I would tell them about the activities that would go on and kind of just orient them around the way that the particular facility operates. I feel like a lot of times they're coming into these new spaces and environments and they don't know what's going on. They've never done this before, most likely. And it all is a new experience to them. But for us, it's like everyday life. So I think being able to just kind of sit them down and kind of work with them and orient them around the way that we function and work would kind of put them at ease a little bit. And it also show them a side of the CNA that's taking care of their family, and to kind of allow them to trust me a little bit in being able to provide care to their family member. And I would just work with them even if it meant that I was kind of making sign-off lists of the supplies that we would use up, or I would write them a grocery list of things that they would need for the resident when they would come back to check on them. Kind of just worked with what they felt like they would need to kind of put them at ease, and that's what I did.
Okay, you did a fantastic job. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, so I actually was just kind of curious about the interviewing process moving forward from this point.
Okay. Thank you for asking. So we're currently completing our first round of interviews, and then we're going to be doing some assessment skill checks on everyone. And then in the second round, we're going to be meeting with more people, and we will meet with you a second time, and you can expect to hear back from us within 1 to 2 weeks. And then if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, thanks so much. If you got any business cards or just a particular email that you would like me to reach out to you on, do you think that's something that you would be able to provide me so I can reach out?
Yeah, of course. We have them on our website page, and you can just type in and you'll go ahead and you'll reach into our HR listings.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too.